Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I am Tanner Knight, and today we've got a box. Let's get into it. Looks like we have a mute. Looks about 14-inch and one screw here. So there is a little pouch on top, and that stuff is inside, but that's not the main event. All right, we have a Tama Superstar in birch. 14 by 6.5-inch snare drum from 1982, I think, is what I remember from the listing. But let's take a look at what we've got, and you'll see pretty immediately what sticks out at you with this snare, I think, or maybe not, I don't know, but let's take a look. Here we have the butt plate first, right next to this Tama Superstar badge, the big T badge, and it looks like we've got a roller type deal here. So really nice non-friction or edged way to send that string around the corner. And we have these bow tie lugs, I believe is what these are called. Very similar to the Ludwig bow tie style, I believe, but these are Tama for the 6.5-inch snare. So let's just keep going around. Again, this is birch. It does look like maple, and it is in fact, I believe, called super maple, just like the Superstar set that it will be going with here in a second. But we have die-cast hoops, which is a really nice option for any snare. I think that it adds a little snappiness to it. We've got the muffler. So maybe it isn't 82. I thought that they got rid of the muffler by 82, but we'll take a look at that. And we'll keep going around. Here's our throw-off, made in Japan. Really nice. That's with the snares engaged. That's disengaged. You can see this whole unit just drops right down. Very smooth, very nice. And it's a different throw-off than the Tama Imperial Star, the King Beat snare that I have. I'll go ahead and compare that to this one. While we're here, you can very clearly see the diagonal seam going right through the throw-off screw set here. So that's very characteristic of the way these shells were constructed. And I don't know if you can see here, but on the bottom, yeah, just in frame, you can see how the snare rim on the bottom has this big window here. That's the same style of rim as the King Beat snare. So we keep going around, and we have one lug that does not match, and that was disclosed to me, so I'm not discovering this for the very first time. I expected that, but it fits. I believe it's a Tama lug. Has longer T-rods as well than the standard bow tie. So I'll work on replacing that one. It's pretty simple to find one of these lugs. They're everywhere for the most part today. Made in Japan as well. They did a semi-honorable job of at least getting one in there that fits. It doesn't look anything like the other ones. Let's just take a look at the head real quick. This is a Remo Emperor coated, made in USA. Nothing to really see there, but let's take a look at the back. We do have an Evans resonant head and a million wires on this snare, on these snare wires. These look like more than 20, probably 30 or so. And it does have a brand here, but I'll have to get my glasses again to read that. You can see inside the snare much better through the clear reso head, which is cool. And you can see that muffler there, which I mentioned, and just the interior of the shell. Very nicely crafted. I believe these are 9-ply birch, maybe 6-ply. I think it's 9-ply, 6 millimeters, but I'm just shooting off the hip here. I haven't consulted these specs in a while to confirm, so I'll just correct myself if I'm wrong. But that's what we've got here. A very nice Tama Superstar snare in the birch super maple variety with the 6.5-inch depth. So let's go ahead and put it with the kit and hear what it sounds like. All right, I know you might have expected to see that Superstar snare in this position right here, but right now I haven't swapped it out yet. And I want to get to a couple different comparisons with this snare, so that's why I left my Pearl Masters Maple Complete, I believe is what this is called, 6.5-inch snare here. I want to hear that one first and not give us a benchmark because this one's nothing like that snare other than the dimensions. But I just like comparing these snares one to one and hearing what they sound like in just kind of the same situation, even though the heads are different, the materials of the shells are different. You know, there's so many things that are different. But the important thing to note is that what has stayed the same is the room, the mic set, and the preamp. So all of that has stayed the same between this snare and the Imperial Star King Beat snare that we'll hear after this, and then we'll get to that Superstar snare. So I don't mean to tease you too much here, but I do want to hear those other two snares first. So here we go. They sound like this. I'm not gonna lie, this has been my favorite snare as of late. This has been my pole position snare for a number of reasons. Also included are the rim shots, so let's hear that. Pretty loud. This also has die-cast hoops that contributes. You can make the batter head a little tighter and get a little more crack out of it with the die-cast hoops. So let's swap this out and hear the Imperial Star King Beat snare, which is also die-cast hoops, but a 5.5 inch depth instead of the 6.5 inch. So let's go ahead and swap that out, hear that one, and then we'll get to the Superstar. So here is the Tama King Beat Imperial Star snare. I actually think it's 5 inches depth, not 5.5. So, you know, a slight difference between 5.5 and 6.5, or 5 and 6.5. But I believe this one is, in fact, 5 inches deep. So here's the throw off for this one. Like I said, it's very different from the Superstar throw off. I think this one's a little earlier, maybe late 70s as well. So take that with a grain of salt. But we do have that same window for the snare wires in the bottom rim. Die-cast hoops and non-bow tie lugs, because we do have the shallower depth. Just has the regular Imperial Star style lugs. So let's go ahead and get this thing mounted up and hear what it sounds like. I forgot to mention the microphone that I have on the snare today. It is a PVM 325, I believe, is the snare mic from that DCM microphone setup, which is basically a drum microphone kit. The PV 328 and 321 on the kick, or the toms and kick respectively. Here's the Imperial Star King Beat snare, 5 inch depth. It's a great sounding snare. I love this snare. This is actually my snare number 2 right now, and it's on the other Superstar kit that I have to my right. And I use this snare almost every day as well. I switch between the two kits. I have 2 Superstar sets set up side by side. It's kind of ridiculous, I know, but those are the smaller sizes. These are the larger sizes, and these are the Super Maple. So that's what we're going to match the next snare with. So that's the King Beat Imperial Star snare. Let's go ahead and hear the Superstar finally. Well, the very first thing that I can tell you when putting this in place is it looks great. It looks perfect for this drum set. It's almost as if it was built for it, but it wasn't, obviously. It came differently. This is a 1980, I believe, Tama Superstar set. I don't think it's much later than 80, but it could be an 81. But we have a glossy finish instead of the satin finish. We have a few other appointments, like the tension rods on the kick drum do not have the textured surface. It's just the shiny metal. So a few different things that indicate 1980. Either way, it sounds like this. Well, I'd say it sounds really good. And the other bit of information that is important to take away is that I'm pretty sure this thing needs some TLC. It's not abused or beaten or worn, but the head is definitely a little old. The reso head actually feels pretty new and good. But the batter head definitely needs to be replaced. And I just tightened up these lugs. I didn't put a tune on here because, you know, what good would that do? I just tried to match the tone of the lugs. But just twisting them felt a little gritty, so I think I'm going to need to lubricate these tension rods and just give this whole drum a good once over, take it all apart, and maybe in doing so I'll be able to replace that one lug and the tension rods and restore this beauty back to its full glory. This is by no means a collector's drum. It's not like collector's grade, I guess is the best way to put it. It's seen some play, and it has some scratches and dings into the surface, and you know, it's not what I'd call a mint condition drum, but I love player's grade stuff. All of my stuff is player's grade or kind of slightly higher than that, just so that, you know, it gets some love and you're not afraid to love it yourself. This specific drum does have a muffler, so let's just engage that. I typically leave the muffler off entirely, just I don't think that it suits itself to the snare sound that I want particularly. I like a little bit of space and overtones in the sound, but here's with that muffler engaged. I actually don't hate it on this drum. There are quite a few overtones in the current configuration, and I think that might be due to the fact that some of these lugs are pretty loose. You know, affixing to the shell, that is. We don't have a perfect seal there. So there's some work to be done on this snare, and we're going to accomplish that maybe in the next video. But I did want to unbox this guy and hear what it sounds like. The other thing that we can explore on this is just without the snare wires. So let me disengage the throw off, which is all the way back there. Whoever put this together probably did not mind where the badge is, but in any event, here's without the snares. So it's nice in the context of a little tom groove. I do have it tightened up pretty tight, as I mentioned. I cranked it pretty high. That's, you know, the standard go-to for any new snare is just tighten it up as far as you'll go and see what it sounds like. But it sounds okay without the throw-off engaged, but it does a really good job of bringing it back to where it needs to be. So who is this snare for? Well, it's for me, and I love Tama stuff. So if you are a Tama Superstar fan, this fits right in with that type of gear. It is in fact a Superstar product. And it sounds awesome, I love it, yes. But this is also more of a rock-oriented snare, I would say. The 6.5-inch depth is typically reserved for the rock music arena. It's loud, it's cracky, it does a lot of different things, and still sits in a mix pretty well. They also make deeper ones like 8.5 or 8 inches, whatever, 10 maybe. I don't have any kind of use for that kind of snare because having a 6.5-inch depth of a snare already sits it pretty tall in my setup here with this arm. So, you know, that might not be the case if I had a standard snare stand, but I do have this DW arm holding up my snare. And yeah, it makes it pretty tall where it needs to be. But this is much lighter than, say, a bell brass snare, or even the rosewood version of the snare, which you see from time to time, but it's much more expensive. This is just the standard birch production with the super maple finish, so nothing exotic about it, but it's just a really, really great drum that fits in with this really, really great drum set that it's sitting next to. So I'm really glad to have this as a complement to my kit, but it does sit firmly in the rock arena. You can get away with some fusion, or even on the other spectrum like metal it would work well for, but you know, it's kind of the equivalent of the Tama bell brass snare as far as what music you would play with this. It's not quite as loud as that, but same style and factor. So do you have any Tama Superstar snares, or even drum sets like this or like this? If you do, let me know what you think. And if you have any suggestions about how to make this snare sound even better, let me know. So I've been Tanner Knight. You have been watching Tanner's Favorite Things. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this style of content, and I'll hopefully be bringing you more as we get down the road. So thanks, and I hope to see you in the next one.